Well, welcome to the first ever episode of Cali and Craig Talk. I am Cali.
I'm Craig.
I am a brand new author. I started writing my first novel in June of this year, and I signed with Deep Hearts YA on September 26th to publish my first novel, which will come out next year in the summer. I also signed 2 other books with Deep Hearts, and they will be released in the fall. I currently write in the male genre, and I'm having a super fun time. Craig Gibb, my co-host and bestie, is not only the co-owner of the publishing house, but he is also my publisher and editor. Craig and I met through DM on Twitter in August of this year, and we connected right away. Well, for me, it was right away. I don't really know about Craig. I'm not sure what Craig was thinking when he got that DM.
I was thinking, oh, someone's talking to me. Okay, I'll go along with this.
But it's a really cute story. I'm going to save that because I don't feel like getting all teared up on that. It probably means more to me than it means to you. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about that right now. So for our first podcast, we thought it would be fun to introduce Craig and John, who are the co-owners of the publishing house, but also do so much more. They are 2 of the most interesting people I've ever met, and I don't have to suck up to them because I already have 3 books signed with them under contract, and Craig is my bestie, so you can trust me when I say that they are flipping awesome. So Craig and John, go ahead and introduce yourself. John, Craig goes first.
I'm always first. So hi, everybody. My name is Craig. I am the co-owner along with John of a publishing company. Officially, legally, we're called Story Perfect, but we operate under the brands of Deep Hearts YA for queer young adult, Deep Desires Press for erotica and erotic romance, Dreamsphere Books for sci-fi fantasy, and Prairie Heart Press for local interests relevant to the Canadian prairies or thereabouts. On the side, I also do some writing. Avid podcast listeners might remember me as Cameron from the Deep Desires podcast and a couple other podcasts because I write erotic stuff under the name Cameron D. James, and I write wholesome stuff under the name Dylan James.
I'm John Robin, and I am the, other half of this company. And mostly, anybody who are authors or people that work with us know of me, but I tend to be a little bit more in the background. But that said, this company is sort of a continuation of mischief that I started in about 2014. I decided to kind of quit my work at the university. I used to be a math student of math and computer science, and it was not the career I wanted to pursue. And I had this opportunity to edit for people. So I started a company called Story Perfect Editing Services. It was just me editing. And within a few years, it got really busy and I needed to bring on more editors. So soon I had a team. And because of Craig's initially self-publishing, and he really knew the ins and outs of how to create a book. And at the same time, we also were bringing a cover artist on board. We had all the pieces to go into publishing. So this whole publishing family that we have now, it started just with just publishing short erotic stories. That was the market that we were interested in 2017, and we still do that.
What made you guys choose erotica as a genre you want to start with?
So that starts with me. So when we first met, I was writing science fiction, which I'm starting to return to. But at the time, I was also doing my master's degree, and I was like, this is too much flipping work. I'm going to do something easy, and writers know this is completely wrong. I'm going to do something easy. I'm just going to do some like smutty romance or some erotica, which I quickly found out is 1,000,000 times harder than science fiction. But the good side of that is erotica specifically thrives on short stories. So I was able to work on my skills doing that and complete my master's degree. And then by then, I already had established myself as a smutty guy. So I just continued with all the dickin'.
You are a smutty guy. John, did you have experience with erotica or no?
Yeah, so I came at it from the editing side because around the same time that Craig was pursuing his self-publishing with erotica. I also was editing that. I mean, when I went into freelance editing, I mean, I'm mostly relying on who is self-publishing books and wanting an editor, and so that's where I discovered, okay, there's a lot of erotica and erotic romance, mostly erotic romance, what I dealt with. So novel length material. So yeah, like I actually got to edit a very fun 4-male werewolf series that was,
Oh my.
yeah, it was it was a lot of fun. And actually so the author told really neat stories, because you also have to do the action and suspense, all that stuff. You know, so you have the plot, but then you have these, just like there's this formula you have to almost know to deliver on, and that is that almost every second chapter there's got to be a really hot sex scene. You can maybe get by with 3 or 4, but it's sort of like action, high stakes, tension, no sex.
Yeah, no sex. No ever sex.
The author who I worked with was brilliant at that balance. And of course we had a little bit of a back and forth where, you know, it was kind of like, I'm going to write this scene. There's 4 men, there's lots of dicks, there's lots of positions. I'm relying on you to tell me if it makes sense. And so sometimes, so I got to change some of the sex positions and some of the angles, and even comment a little bit on, well, with 2 guys or 3 guys or whatever, like this wouldn't happen. And so it was quite a lot of fun.
Any positions that I've written about, like there's no 4 guys here in my house for sure, it's just my husband and I, but like anything that I wrote, like during all my stuff, my husband was always in the room, and like I'd get up and I'm like, can you stay here for a minute? And he's just like, you know, working or something, and I just like walk over and I just like jump on top of him and straddle him to see like if it was possible for me to move his head in a certain way. And he's just like working. I'm like, hey, hold on a minute, stand here. And I just like pull. There's one scene where like somebody like rips the shirts off the shoulders, and I'm just like, hey, stand still.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a button down on, so I'm like, go get a button down on. And he's like, okay. Goes in the closet, grabs the button down shirt, and I'm like, now sit. So I ran over and I was like, whoosh, and I was like, oh, it works. And then I just walked away. And he's like, you're just gonna walk away now? I'm like, yeah, I got what I needed.
Yeah, writing research is complete, so thank you.
I got what I needed. He's like sitting there, he's like, not cool. Don't do that again. But yeah, no, he's a fan of that kind of research. So we have fun with that. But yeah, so 4 werewolves, that's very interesting to me.
I feel like I should jump in
You
because
should.
lots of people are going to hit up John. It's like, oh, 4 men, eh? He
No.
was not editing 4 men from experience. That was just knowing how to write a good scene, not from like, we don't normally have 4 werewolves in the bed all at once at this house.
Yeah, that's right. That's too much. It'll break the bed. We have to even it out.
I'm actually not into werewolves, you know that? I'm really like a vampire girl. Like if I had to choose, I'm like, we have this debate often. Actually, when we play Magic the Gathering, like I have vampires and my husband has werewolves, and that's like our classic like rivalry. But like I would never do a werewolf. Ever.
So yeah, I would do a werewolf perhaps in human form. I think I'm more
wolf form. He has to be a wolf. It's nighttime.
Sure. All right.
Oh,
so I think I'm sorry. I was gonna say I think I'm more vampire, but that's because I haven't seen enough popular media with werewolves. I think there's not enough of it. I haven't watched Teen Wolf. I've been told that's a lot of gays love it. I'll say it like that.
Yeah, so the other thing, it's interesting to know genre conventions. Like this is something I'm sure down the road in our podcast we talk more about what kind of books should people be looking at, like what are we looking for, what should you strive for when you write a manuscript. It's really good to get to know your genre and even your subgenre, and to a level of that is almost like a formula. You could turn it into a formula. And I don't mean to say that it's like you're just filling in blanks, but there are these expected types of scenes, like, you know, an example being in most thrillers or suspense novels, there's a moment where the hero's at the mercy of the villain. And you see these in these like action movies or whatever, where like end scene, like someone is that particular scene is there. So, there's so many ways that could look in your unique story, but there's an example of genre conventions. And so in werewolf stories, the usual convention is they're in the wolf form when there's action. So when there's fighting, they're going through the plot, if you will, the non-sex plot. But when they're in the sexy time, it's all human form. So essentially, that's kind of like the appeal. Like it separates that kind of, I don't think I could be in bed with someone who's all like half wolf. It separates that because they're completely like this hot, really muscular, hairy guy, which is, if you just imagine the werewolf in human form, so completely human. But
are you into hairy guys?
I'm not, but I know that
yes.
the readers of that genre.
Craig is, yes. Craig, you like hair?
That's why John has a beard.
So like hairy chests too? Yeah.
I really wish that John would grow his beard out like lumberjack style, but he says it won't work with him.
No, it starts to look like pubic hair after. So it's like usually about this length here, just stubble. Beyond that, it's gone. It gets trimmed away.
My God. So Craig, what was your intent when you established Deep Desires?
Yeah, so around the time that we were talking about starting up the publishing company, I was really comfortable with self-publishing. I really enjoy that process, sometimes even more than the writing process itself. But I also knew a lot of authors who love writing, but they just hate the publishing process so much. It's too confusing or too technical because you need certain file formats, or like it just takes too much time, and they would really just rather be sitting in front of their word processor hammering out a new story. So John and I thought about it. We saw an opportunity there. We both love working with stories, helping people bring their stories to life and helping them reach their audiences. And so we started up the company with the intention of helping other people because we both love that so much.
That's awesome. That kind of what you said, Craig, actually leads me into my next question, because for me, being a new author, I wasn't intimidated at all at first because of the idea had come to me for You Can Call Me Cooper, and I wrote that bad boy out like really fast. But what was intimidating was after I wrote it, right before I submitted, was going online and seeing just like devastation after devastation of people saying, I wrote this and I've been rejected so many times and literary agents aren't calling me and no one cares. And they were just like, there's just a lot of very depressing stuff. So I reached out to a writer who lives in England, who shall remain nameless because I did not ask for his permission. Super nice guy. But I actually found him because he was giving like a lesson on proper comma usage, which Cali Kitsu need desperately because I literally put commas just all over the place. I cannot use commas properly. I will fully admit that. But anyway, I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I wrote this whole thing. I'm getting ready to submit it. Do I need an editor? Do I not need an editor? And he's an editor. So, and he was super nice. And he was like, I think that if you're comfortable with what you've written, the publishing house that you reach out to is going to edit it. So don't let someone swindle you out of money. And he was like, even me, like, even me, like, I edit books for a living. And he's like, but you don't need to pay someone to do that once you're comfortable. He said, if you're going to self-publish, then yes, you should get an editor and pay someone to get it. So that was really super helpful for me as a first-time author, because there was a point where I just didn't know, like, if I needed to pay someone $2,000 to edit my book, that who knows if I'm ever going to get it signed. And then, that kind of led to me having just a brief discussion with him. And it was really important for me because I'm not really used to social media because I've stayed off of it. My husband and I hadn't used social media, and Craig knows this because I've told him. And also Craig teaches me everything all the time, like a grandma. But he was really nice because I had said to him, I said, when I'm on Twitter and I'm reading all these things, I don't know if I can say Twitter, X, when I'm on X and I'm reading these things, it's actually quite depressing because there's a lot of authors who've been trying for a really long time to get written. And I said to him, I said, I think that it's really important for people to recognize that although we share a lot of the same experiences and we can share the same emotions and we can feel the same things, not everyone's experience is going to be the same as someone else's. So just because someone else has submitted to 500 people or whatever, been writing a really long time, that wasn't necessarily what I should expect from me. And I think that social media in that regard is a bit dangerous because it kind of put me in a negative headspace when I was reading that. So luckily I had, I'm like kind of if I get knocked down, I'm back up, like I'm like, I take like a couple minutes and then I have like a good breakdown and then I'm like, oh, forget it. Screw the world. I'm coming at him harder. I don't know if that's like my Italian personality or what it is, but I'm never down for long. So I get knocked down, I get back up. So my question would be for you, because I have kind of my own feeling about this. But Craig, my question would be for you is with self-publishing, do you feel like self-publishing is just a better route for some people versus others?
Definitely for some people versus others, but also for some genres over others. So if any listeners are writing erotica specifically, that you probably are going to have much better success if you self-publish. Erotic romance, you can do quite well self-publishing. When you start to get into, this is going to be the wrong word, but if you start to get into the genres that are quote unquote a little bit more literary, so fantasy, science fiction, murder mystery, with those sorts of genres, I think readers tend to look a little bit more for books that have been traditionally published. So you can do very well self-publishing, but you're going to have a harder time of it. Whereas if you're writing an erotic romance novel, the old adage of sex sells really does apply. So you're not going to be guaranteed sales, of course, but it is easier to sell self-published stuff if there's sort of a smutty quality to it. But if you're doing something that doesn't have that, such as sci-fi, fantasy, murder mystery, literary fiction, those sorts of genres, I think readers tend to gravitate more towards traditionally published. But the world continues to change, so who knows what's going to happen going forward. There's definitely a rise in smaller publishers, our size and slightly bigger than us, and the quality of fiction that they put out. The big five, or is it the big four now?
It's five. It's five.
Okay.
It's still five.
The big five, they have a lot of the power and a lot of the reach. So a lot of their books end up in bookstores and grocery stores. So that is also how they tend to sell better. I think it comes down partly to where someone looks when they are looking for a certain genre. So for example, when I want to read a thriller book, I tend to go to the thriller section of the physical bookstore. Sometimes I'll check out the books they have at the grocery store because that tends to be like the better selling thrillers. But if I'm reading something smutty or kinky, or maybe even not that kinky, but let's say it's a romance with lots of sex, especially if it's something that's gay, that's going to be really hard to find what I want at the bookstore, and definitely not at the grocery store, especially if I want some gay content in there. So then I would tend to go, oh, well, I better see what Amazon has, see what Smashwords has, Apple Books. And a lot of times when you're looking for those genres on electronic platforms, you can't always tell what's self-published versus what's traditionally published. A lot of people in the writing and publishing world, we know what to look for. Like, oh yeah, this is self-published, this is traditionally published. But I think people outside of this world don't know that. For example, my mom, she'll buy things off of Amazon and she'll be like, this was, so back in the day, I want to say 7 or 8 years ago, with how the Amazon Kindle Unlimited stuff worked, it made a lot of financial sense for people to break up their novels into multiple parts. And so she was reading this book that was split into, I think it was 7 or 11 parts, and she was really enjoying it, but she had no idea why would this big publisher split it
Yeah.
up into 7 parts. And I'm like, oh, no, that's self-published, and this is
Hmm.
why they've chosen to do that. So I'm not slamming the author for doing that. I know
Right.
exactly why the author did that, and you got to make a living and you got to earn some money for your work. And so I fully understand. But
Yeah.
she was looking at something that was clearly self-published, not put out by a big publisher, and she had no idea.
I think that's
She's
cool. I think that's really
Yeah,
cool.
that
Yeah.
is cool. That means that author publishers like us that have a very small budget, or authors who are doing it by themselves, they can put out stuff that easily competes with the big publishers. Like, the
Yeah.
world has changed.
I think that for me, with self-publishing, I could see a lot of that being appealing to a lot of people because even though I was really, I didn't have like any sad stuff happen to me, and it wasn't like like an extensive period where, no one wanted my book and I felt sad because I thought it wasn't going to survive. I could see the stress of that just being too much. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
reaching out and just asking people, and like the literary agent world, like it just seems to be so competitive that people are, I feel like there are just a lot of avenues right now for self-publishing. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. And I think it's very important to keep in mind, and it's hard to keep this in mind when you get receiver rejection, I understand, but these decisions are always subjective, they're not objective. So just
Yeah.
because we or an agent or another publisher didn't take your book, that doesn't always mean your book is bad. Like, we have turned down stuff that has gone on to be published by other publishers, and at least one of them has gone on to win awards as well. And so that person, specifically that person, has done very well for themselves. And we don't feel bad about turning them down because, yes, the book is great, it's doing great, but it really wasn't for us. It's really just the subjective thing. We weren't certain that we could sell it to our audience. And so they found a publisher that did have that confidence in their ability to sell the book.
Yeah.
And so it's important to keep that in mind for any writers that are listening here. But self-publishing, if you want to take that step, and I don't mean that in any sort of negative way. I started as self-publisher, so obviously I love it. There's a lot of work that goes into it. You have to hire your own editors, your own cover designer, or if you have those skills yourself specifically for cover design, or if you have some really good people who can edit for free, or for if you treat them to a nice dinner, use whatever resources you have. So it gives you a lot of control, but that also means you're responsible for all of that.
Hmm.
So it is quite the challenge. It can be rewarding if it works out, but it also can be quite frustrating if it doesn't work out. You invest all
Yeah.
this time and this money,
Yeah.
and it's not selling for some reason.
Yeah.
And
I
then you
could see
don't
that.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, just to add to this whole self-publishing versus traditional. Here's the thing: some people do go to self-publishing for there's two different. There's, I guess, a good reason and a bad reason. And so where self-publishing usually gets a bad name is when it sort of turns into a, well, you know what, screw them, they're all wrong, no one
Yeah.
appreciates my work. And
Yeah.
so then within a month, the book is up on Amazon. Probably
Yep.
hasn't been edited, but most importantly, hasn't really the author hasn't really been able to take the time to say, okay, how is this book going to be received by readers? Who is my reader?
Yeah.
What are the elements? Why was the publishing people I sent it to turning me down? So when you do that rapid fire approach, which you see a lot, and you see a lot of books popping up because of that,
Hmm.
it's sort of hard. It's a complete guess, and you have really, unfortunately, a lot of times there's just no sales, no comments, no reviews, and so you really don't get feedback, because sometimes people think, well, I'm just going to publish my book because I want to just get it out there and see maybe readers will like it. But then
Yeah.
what happens a lot of the time is, when you do that quick approach without really thinking it through, you'll get no feedback, and so then you're left saying, what's going wrong? So now that said, there are some people, when they go into self-publishing with the business mindset, and they try to imagine and say, I'm going to be my own publishing house and put this through the ringer. So that's why I mentioned it's good to know your genre, even your
Hmm.
subgenre, and
Yeah.
all the specific things. You should do some research, read at least 10 books that are in your exact subgenre and try and make a chart of like what are like some of the general elements and the types of scenes that tend to pop up, because you could pretty much be guaranteed that those writers are aware of the expectations, and that'll give you a sense of at least what beats to kind of hit. So that's helpful if you're self-publishing.
That is helpful. Yeah.
But sort of to tie it to the other part, which is going to lead to a compliment. So
Callie loves compliments.
It's actually quite rare. Like
if he gives you compliments, you will rub it in my face how great John is.
Yeah.
And forget about it, because you know what? When John sent that thing to you, I freaking had that as my screensaver for like 2 days. The thing about Froze.
Oh, yes, yes.
Oh, yes, I did. Okay, go ahead, John. So what were you saying?
Yeah. So something that, yeah, but the thing is, openness to feedback from us, and very quick to respond to it, and very congenial to respond to it. That's huge. And so I mean, that if you just fast forward a bit, I mean, this started with, I mean, I know these things because all the things you sent to Craig, writing related, they come to my inbox and I'm reading it. Craig and I are talking about it. And then so when you're getting replies from Craig, what's filtered out is me in the background sort of saying, okay, I see this potential, that potential. And I mean, in your case, the first thing, you did something that I rarely see writers do, and they're not like, it's really difficult for writers to do this. You had something close to 200,000 words. It was way too long for a book. And we just take the simplest thing that you could tell a writer at the outset, 80,000 words. And like I remember Craig updating me. It was like matter of days. You've already got this 80, you've got it worked out, and it's submitted. It's been reworked. And so the thing about that is, I saw how quick you responded. I saw that you took the thing that often shuts writers down, because you'd be, you know, the number of times I've had writers come back and say, well, I put all this work into it and it has to be long because I can't. And so all this stuff that it's like, you can't let go of this artistic woe is me sort of thing. And whereas what I saw and how you respond is, you're thinking like a writer. You're thinking like a writer who wants to, it's not just about getting published and making money, but it's about wanting to give a book that your readers are going to enjoy. And you're saying, I'm going to accept the feedback. And it's not about, I'm not trying to assert my artistic vision, whatever it is.
No.
You trust that you have that paint and you can make more stuff.
Yeah.
And you did this to show us, here's where I started. Can you help me? And so because you respond so quick, we gave you some further feedback, because I think some of the direction, just in terms of what is the genre, and we gave you that, and you were quick to do. So the fact,
you guys totally flipped the genre, and I did a complete rewrite. I rewrote the entire freaking story in like a day and a half. It was in 2 days. Got it. I met with Craig on Zoom on Thursday, and because I couldn't, you gave it to me on it was a Monday or a Tuesday, and I had questions about switching over. So I asked Craig to meet with me, which, by the way, don't ask my bestie to meet with you in Zoom, because he will not meet with you in Zoom. This is a special case for me only. So don't even think you're going to reach out to him and ask him to meet you in Zoom, because he's not going to do it. I'm speaking for him now. He's not doing that. That was for me only. Okay. But yeah, so I had originally written the story as an erotic male romance, which really it wasn't. It was just because I really actually didn't know how to classify it. But I had written the whole story, 200,000 words. And then Craig came back and said there was like way too many laughs, like during our first conversation. You remember?
Yeah, I did a word search for see how many times laugh shows up in your book, and it was how much?
It was like 100 and it was like 100 and something. And you were like, we were DMing, John. So like when I messaged him, and I know that you probably know this, but everyone else isn't. But so I had originally messaged him, and he was like, well, when I do a search for laugh, there's like 168 cases of laughing, which is a lot. So that was one thing he said. And then he said, the other thing was writing the characters' feelings out, like explaining the characters' emotions. And that was actually, like, for me, that was the thing that tied me to you. That, and also the note, like you also pointed out, sometimes my main character, but I don't know how to explain that so that I don't spoil the story. But I had just some stuff in there that needed to be swapped around. But you actually thought that that part was great. And you were like, this is great. I'm totally tied to this character already, this main character. And I was like, oh shit, that's not the main character. So like I went back and fixed that. That same night, I took out every freaking laugh from that book, all 200 freaking thousand words I went through. And then like the next day I was like, hey, I'm working on the laughs. And I also have another book that I hadn't submitted to them. Well, to you guys, that's book 2 of that series, and I took all the laughs out of that one too. So like within 24 hours I had cleaned up the laughs in over like 300,000 words. So I did that, and then you guys came back and were like, okay, we want to move you to YA, how do you feel about that? So then I rewrote the whole damn story in 2 days. So yeah, I definitely wanted to show you guys that I felt like I could do it, and I knew that I could do it, and I was just hopeful that I did a good job at it.
Yeah, and
Well, you
something
obviously did.
yeah, and something is really important about this. It's you know, we're also I'm aware in this podcast there could be aspiring writers or people who have written a novel and they're looking at what do I do listening to it. And I think something really important this is highlighting is when you respond to feedback the way you did, what that does for us, and I'd say most publishers are like this as well, even the big ones. When they see that, they're saying, okay, this is good because this is going to go to edits and it's going to get put through a punching bag. Like this author's going to hate their book by the end. Yeah. So we want to see how quickly you did respond to these big things, because now I know that when this book goes to edits, if there's some further things that you need to do, you'll be on that. And you showed that you're open to receiving the feedback, and then on top of it still making a great story. And so what's also interesting is, you wrote these 2 other basically book 1, book 2 of another series that sort of ripples out from this process. So not only did you take the feedback on for your debut and have that ready to go now, slotted for edits, but you carried that feedback, said, oh, okay, YA, like here's some more stuff I could do, a unique concept. So I mean, that's just great right there. And so that to me is like, this is like our ideal, what we want to see in a writer. And so, yeah, I mean, that's it should be the highest praise you could get from us in terms of the book you submitted, but also your ability as a writer to be like, I can write, I can take words, I can do things with them, and I'm not attached to one thing I did. It's like you're looking to create something that's just all around gonna be a teamwork endeavor, and a book is very much a teamwork thing. The writer is like the captain of the charge in charge of the ship, but so many people will come on board and be giving directions. So like you,
Craig, do you need to feed the cat? Do you need to get up and feed the cat? Are you sure?
No, I fed them before we started, just so that he
Craig and John have 2 adorable little kitties, and they're perfect. And if you look on our social media, I'm definitely going to ask them if I can put a picture of them on there, because they are just adorable.
I think we can do that. So for the listeners, I have our younger cat Shiger in front of me. Shiger is short for Shy Tiger. We didn't give him that name, but that's the name he came with, and he is everybody's favorite. Somewhere in the house, we have Wizard, which is...
Hey, but Wizard is my favorite. I never told you, Shy. Hi, Shy Girl. You're so handsome. I did not say that I like your brother better.
So Wizard is super cuddly with us, but we call him the murder cat because he will rip your face off if he meets you. We've had people come over who are like, oh, it's fine. I've had angry cats before. I've had bad cats. I know how to handle it. And then when Wizard comes flying at their face, they're like, oh my God, no, I'm leaving.
Yeah. Okay, but that's like actually super relatable to people with kids because like if you have kids and then you like you tell like your friends, you're like, hey, I don't know, I can't really have you come over because the kids are like crazy right now, and they're like, oh, I don't mind, because like one of my children, and I won't say which one of them is very introverted and just does not, which is the opposite of me, obviously. But that one does not like people to come over. And like they are not afraid to tell people that they would like those people to leave the house. And so like I'm like, maybe you shouldn't come over because they're kind of in a mood, maybe. And then they're like, oh no, it's just a kid, I don't really care. And they come over and like, kids like, when are you leaving? And they're like, give me the face, like 20 minutes later, and then so like my sister is like a great example because she's like, oh, okay, I'll see you on Christmas. And then the one child is like, do you have to come over on Christmas? And she's like, my sister's like in tears. You know what I mean? So like she told me I was gonna be fine, but no, it's not fine. But I actually do want to meet the murder cat. I do.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, your story kind of reminds me of my grandmother. After family dinner and we socialized for like half hour after dinner, she would just stand up, dust off her hands and say, all right, everybody go home. And then she'd leave the room.
With that. I'm on board with that. The dinner is over. It's time for everybody to leave. I'm a super big fan of that. I like that grandma. She got it right.
Yeah, we've tried to adopt that when people are over a little too long. We have to figure out how to say it nicely because, we're not grandmothers who can get away with being like, okay, go home. But
I know, but you can use me as an excuse now because now we have the podcast. So now you can make me sound like Sophia Loren and just be like, oh my gosh, you guys have no idea. Callie's just throwing an absolute fit. I have to go. I have to deal with her right now, or she's just going to totally lose it. And then you just be like on your phone and pretend you're talking to me. That will totally work. I think
I'll do it.
Either we can go two ways. We could either say that we have a important recording, or it's like, this recording went so long yesterday, we're exhausted, we need to get to sleep.
I really think you could do that. I think that would work. I was actually going to text you that when you guys were doing your Thanksgiving thing. I was going to tell you that, Craig, but when I texted it out, it just didn't look right. I was going to say like, hey, if at any point you need to get out of there, just say you have like this diva writer who won't like, and you have to like calm her down. But like it was like not, you know what I mean? In text, it just didn't look right. So.
Oh yeah. Well, after Thanksgiving dinner, I skedaddled pretty quick, and I left John there, and he was there for an extra hour playing video games with my cousin.
Well, I wasn't playing video games. He was trying to give me some special feature in the game that he required logging in and out. It was complicated.
What game was
telling me what to do. This is the Breath of the Wild game. So yeah, it's I guess it's called the Amiibo, I guess. It's new to me. It's something that I'm still working my way through that game. Like I've got the main 4 divine beasts, and I have to do I want to, the completionist in me, I want to do the side quests and collect everything.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna be there forever trying to be a completionist in Zelda. You'll never finish that.
Well, I think I'm not gonna do them all, but I wanted to at least do like the captured memories and just a few, at least to try and get the shrines so that I go in good strength and everything, and then finish the game, because I know there's already a sequel that came out, but
there is. You're a little behind.
Yeah, I honestly like games. I like the idea of having time to play, but with the garden and during spring, summer, fall, like I am so busy. And then the winter, it's like, oh, okay, I have more time to play the game. But then what happens is I just spend more time editing and writing, more time playing the piano. And so, and all said and done, it's often like I want to go back to the game, but that's why it's taken me 2 years on Breath of the Wild. So even though I don't play much, when I do play, I have fun, and it's good to just have a game to go to. Right?
My God, Craig, one time I think for one podcast, maybe we could do it on Twitch. One time we need to hook it up so like I can play with John and we'll just laugh at how awful it is. And going back to that, not wanting to let people not leaving like on an appropriate time. Like we actually have Halloween party on Friday, but I really don't want to do that now. because I don't know how to get like people out of the house. But I also bought some really cool stuff to make those cool drinks. Do you remember those ones I showed you with the cotton candy in them?
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, they look really cool. I think I'm
Wouldn't
gonna
the
make those. But
wouldn't the
so
cotton candy just melt if it's sitting on top
I
of?
think so, but I think the idea is that it's not technically like in the cup. It's like on top of it, like kind of like hovering.
Oh, okay.
But I think I'm wondering if that's like the thing, right? Is like you have the cotton candy and then you kind of like move it in with your straw and it's cool because it flavors the drink more, maybe because it's just
Yeah.
sugar.
Yeah.
I'll
I'm
have to
just
let you
thinking
know.
of, have you seen the clip of the raccoon washing cotton candy before he eats it?
No?
Oh, okay, because raccoons
What?
wash their food, and so he's like washing the cotton candy in the river, and it dissolves, and he's like looking like, where's
No, but I
my?
need to see this. I have to see this clip. This is so funny. Oh my God, I have to look it up. So my question is this about books and bookstores. So I feel like obviously ebooks are way more popular and probably sell more, but I am a person who loves a physical book too. So like a lot of times I'll go to Barnes and Noble, or actually I just bought this book from Target the other day, and just because I love the cover, like I love cover art so much. Like I'm such a huge fan of cover artists. But my question is, how is that determined whether a book that's published by a company goes into a physical store or does not go into a physical store? Who decides that?
So that is, I used to work in a bookstore, like 2 decades ago. So that is at that time it was just determined at the bookstore level. Nowadays, it might be at the book chain level, so a
Mm-hmm.
little bit higher up. But they're looking for number one, is this something that we can really sell? And number two, can we return it if we don't sell it?
Mm,
Because they don't want to take any loss. So they tend to lean heavily on trusting the big publishers, which makes sense because that's where the marketing budget comes from. That's where the big authors come from. Um, they can order like 50 copies, and if it doesn't sell, they can return all 50 copies, and the big publisher won't really take a hit for that.
mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, back in the day anyway, I remember receiving, not me specifically because I didn't do the ordering, but I remember the
Mm-hmm.
bookstore receiving these catalogs of here's everything that our publishing house or imprint is releasing in the next 4 months or 3 months because the quarters. So here's everything in the next 3 months, all the covers, all the blurbs, if any of them have any reviews already. And then we would just go through and we'd be like, okay, we'll get this one, this one, this one, this one. We'll skip these. We know this author sells well. And so, yeah, they rely on the big publishers because when you go beyond that, there are who knows how many small publishers vying for attention. And a lot of them, ourselves included, rely heavily on print on demand for our paperback. So we don't
Mm-hmm.
do a print run.
Right.
So we don't have this stock of like 10,000 books. And
Which is
so,
really smart, which is really
yeah,
smart for everyone.
so it's smart from a lot of perspectives, but from the
Mhm.
bookstore, when they order print on demand books, they cannot usually return them. So they only take them if they know they can sell it, or sometimes if it's a local author that they want to support. So we do see what we think are bookstore orders coming through because we'll see bulks of like 12 in a day of one specific title all at once. And so we know
Yeah.
that's probably a store ordering a dozen.
Yeah.
Um, that was very rambly, but yeah, that's who
That's
makes the
okay.
decision.
Yeah, so the bookstore makes the decision.
Yeah.
The book chain makes the decision. One of my favorite John lines from that podcast that I listened to, that actually gave me like a little bit of teary eyes, was you had the quote that you said, you were explaining why or how you choose to take a book. And you said at the end of the day for you, you have to feel like this is a really good story. I would be proud to add this to our catalog. I'm excited about this. And I thought that that was so great because I was like, oh my God, that's how he felt like at one point about my book. But is that still like pretty much the process that you guys use, like both of you, when you're reading something? Because I know Craig told me he tends to like a lot of stuff. And I don't know if you technically like everything or if you're a little bit harder to please, John.
Hmm.
He's
Well, no,
harder to please.
Yeah,
You're harder to please.
I've gotten harder. So I say no to maybe 95% of what comes in my inbox. Um,
Do you want to
so
rephrase that?
what's
You've
that?
gotten harder.
Craig and I are such perverts.
I've gotten harder.
You
Well,
just said I've gotten harder, and I was like, and Craig and I were like this.
well, I gotta insert some innuendos in there in a
Oh my
podcast
God.
that has
90% of my
partly
conversations with
erotic.
Craig are innuendos. Go.
All right,
So
continue. I think this should all stay in. Don't edit this out.
I'm
So
not
it's
gonna edit.
you've gotten harder, John.
John, you've gotten harder.
I've gotten harder. 95% of what comes my way doesn't get in. Since
That's
we're
because
doing
he's a top.
here,
Oh my
yeah,
God, I'm gonna die.
but of course, the 5% that does get in, it has to really excite me enough to just, yeah, like I have to say, it's sort of like, okay, I'm gonna end the innuendo here because I'm grappling, I'm grasping too much to try and
It was
keep
really
it up.
good. That was really good. That was great innuendo. We don't
But
need any more.
yeah, but on a more serious note, no, we're so it's the same thing for me.
Yeah.
I find so the 95% rejection rate, when we recorded that podcast,
Wait, who said 95% rejection rate? I didn't say that.
oh no, well, me, but I'm saying if I was to
Oh.
say where was that when the thing you just quoted,
Oh, okay.
I was
Yeah.
maybe about an 80% rejection rate.
Sorry.
Maybe lower, but it's gotten higher only because one thing we've been able to do is learn from
Mhm.
actually taking risks on things. And a lot of times it's like, nope, didn't work. And so the thing that I have to do is say, okay, this didn't work. Why? Think about that. And so there's a lot of things that would come my way and they were maybes, and it's a big question mark maybe because I don't have the data, so it is a complete guess. I'm basing it on other similar books and popularity and saying, well, this book like similar like that seemed to be popular, so here's something like that, maybe this will do well. It's all guesswork. But then now we've published like I want to say Craig has the exact numbers on this. We're around 200 titles. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we have that much data. We've learned and we've tried to learn from every one of them. So the things that have done well, can we get more like that? Or is there something new we're taking that will remind us of something that did well? Like that's another way. You don't get to control what comes to your inbox. And so that's
I get a lot of dicks in my inbox.
yeah, there's no like little recipe card where I mean, that's what our call for submissions page is supposed to be. It's if I was to write up a recipe saying, can you put this in a manuscript? So, but the reality is no one's going to go and do that exactly. It's just a general idea, right? And so for the most part, we balance between what it is we wish we could see, and then when it does come in and having to say yes or no, it really comes down to that ideal list I have that that will sort of tell me, okay, we're looking for something like this, something like that. But that said, there are sometimes these no-brainer submissions where it's not just down to, it's not like I say all this is like the more rational side of trying to decide is it a good title to acquire, but really it's ultimately a subjective feeling thing, and it's still the same. Like when I'm really not, I feel like we need to take this, but I don't have 100% guarantee that this book will be super successful, but it's like, do I love this? So if this book didn't sell well, but you know what, it still would I still be like, but I'm proud to have that book, because this book, I'm thinking about another angle. It's not just about sales and money. It's also about our catalog. So if someone's going to our website and our different stores and stuff, and they're seeing our books, am I still going to say, no matter how this book sells, I'm proud that that's in the catalog, that fits. That's us. That's our brand. That's the quality of stuff we publish. That's the kind of stories that interest us. So decision of publishing is really complex. It can't be boiled down just to money. I think in the bigger publishers, they are a lot more money driven, and part of that is their acquisitions process. They have teams of marketing editors who are who and they have whole like departments of people that will compile statistics. They analyze sales stats of other companies. They've got it thing right down to a science, and so their yes and no is probably a lot harder. And it is coming down to, does this meet our dream thing we're looking for? And but that said, I mean, just from listening to interviews with editors and at the big houses and agents, they're still similar to us in that it is a subjective call, and it comes down to excitement. Is this like, this book's really great? Yeah, this is what I think everyone's going to love this.
What do you think your submission, do you guys have a higher success rate for one of your imprints over the others, like based on like do you tend to accept more for one of them than the other?
Young adult is a real strong seller. Erotic romance, some of it does really well, but usually it's second place to YA. And it's really interesting because when I compare our company specifically to the two other companies I'm thinking about, there's not really a whole lot different in what we're doing. But for some reason, the YA audience for us is stronger than it is for other publishers. It's really interesting how us and these other publishers can publish very similar stuff, but we have very different sales trends.
It is really interesting. Yeah.
I am just continually surprised. So it's not just this year, but I'm surprised every year with the sheer quality of work that shows up in our submissions. We see amazing books. We don't take them all. There are some that are, I wish I could publish these books, but we know that we can't sell them and they would be better off with another publisher. And it just blows my mind, the creativity of various authors, the passion that people have in their storytelling, and that they are willing to trust us to help bring their work to life. And it's just, I'm continually blown away by that. I'm honored by the trust and honored to share that experience. And so, I mean, it's not really, I guess it's not technically a surprise because it's been happening every year, but it's just something that continues to blow my mind.
Yeah, I think for me though, with you specifically, I mean, I really honestly just met John actually the other day. So John's always kind of been like in the background. It's like, okay, well, John's the one that's going to make the decision. I was like, okay, I don't know, John. Like, I was a little afraid of John, to be honest.
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I was like a little afraid. I'm like, okay, well, like, I think Craig really likes me, but I don't know about John, and John might not like my book, and I know it's going to happen. But for me, with, again, just going back to that initial DM with you, and the way that you went through the story, like that forged a bond of trust with me that was so strong, that, I mean, even now, like I joke around with my husband all the time. I just did it in the parking lot the other day. Anytime it's like a near death situation, like there was like there was an elderly gentleman pulling in beside me in his car, and he was so cute. He had like a little top hat on. He had like a fedora. He was really cute, but he was like really pulling in. And so I was like squished up against the door so he didn't hit me. And I was like, tell Craig he can do whatever he wants with my books, but he can't put any extra. And, you know, I said the two names of the characters, and they absolutely cannot fight. And my husband's like, I really don't like that your last words are that you're leaving your books to Craig. And I'm like, but I trust you with my books. You know what I mean? Because I know that you care about my books, and I know that you care about my writing. So for me, I think that's what the most important things is to me as an author. And that was what the most important thing to me was as a new author, was finding someone that was going to care about my work and wasn't going to say like, you know what, Cali, this is really good, but we need to change this, this, and this so that we can make more money. Or if you do this, this is going to, you know, this is going to make more money, or this is like, that was another reason I didn't seek out a literary agent. That was why I didn't want to go for the big five. And I have no idea how I would have done. I might have fallen on my face. I have no idea. But for me, you gave me exactly what I want, and you continue to give me what I want, which is why you're my bestie and which is why I'm here with you. But having someone who basically like from the onset was like, hey, I read that. I'm reading this with you on Twitter. We're in a DM. Like, you have no idea who I am. And you took the time to go through and give me like seriously, like just great feedback. And it was, you had no reason to do that other than your love of books and your love of writing and just the genuine passion for creativity. And like, that was really powerful for me just as a person, like to be like, wow, like he really like just looked at my work and saw it. So like for me, like from that moment, like it was like Craig or die. Like I don't want anybody else. Like I have told John, I don't know if Craig has told you, but like I'm here forever. That's why we're doing the podcast. That's why I'm doing everything. Like you guys have it on, I'll record it. I'll leave it in the podcast. Cali is never leaving Craig. Cali is with Craig forever. That's it. I'm not giving you a chance to respond to that, Craig, because if you don't say something nice, you're going to make me sad.
And that brings us to the end of the very first episode of the Cali and Craig Talk podcast. And we're going to make it the new tradition that the guest of the week ends off the show. So, John, we're going to toss it over to you. Any last words for our audience?
I hope that especially any aspiring writers or even first-time authors who are early in their journey will find some encouragement, and also just insight, hearing us talk a little bit about our company and how it grew. It's important to know that both Craig and I started out exactly where you are. Like even before I went into editing on my own, and Craig went into self-publishing his his romance stories in the early days. We were aspiring writers. We actually met at a convention. That's
I'm getting that story too.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but yeah, we're definitely getting that story. We'll do it during my interview. We'll swap stories. Go.
Yeah. So like we met at a convention as writers trying to break in, and fast forward all these years and the little steps we took because we were committed, passionate about this writing thing we love. Our common date night was going to a Starbucks to sit on our laptops and both work on our stories. And soon that became me working on the editing project I was being paid to do. And then it became Craig working on formatting books that we're publishing. And just here we are doing this thing. And I love that we can bring writers in who were where we were. And you can go so far with it, whether it be writing several series and writing lots and lots of books. And that may be your thing. Maybe you'll get into publishing. Maybe you'll go somewhere else in the related industry, whether it be editing or whatnot. But I hope that whoever's listening is just really encouraged and excited about if storytelling is something you feel as passionately as we do, stories, then whether your manuscript ends up in our inbox and you're soon to be author of ours, or you go a different direction with it, I just hope that this will add some extra enthusiasm and just keep doing what you do. Like never give up. If you feel driven to write and it's something that you would do no matter what, whether you're famous or whether you're successful financially, but you would just always do it, then you should be doing it. And I think the path can come together provided you do put the feelers out and get to know, like get feedback, start reaching out to publishers, get to know people. And there's good ones, there's bad ones, right? And so here are good ones because we're nice. We
are nice.
We don't reject you saying, oh, there's some bad formatting here, or you have too many commas on this page, and it should be like a standard. Like this is what authors should look for when they're looking for who is my publisher. It's either us.
I agree.
If they're not us, then I hope they have the same ethics.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I agree. I think it just comes down to what you want. You know what I mean? For me, it's about the publisher, which is why I'm here, which is why all I want to do is help the brand grow and grow with you guys. Yeah. So that's it for me. That's
Great.
it.
All
right. So thank you everyone for joining us. That was super fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.